Okay, who wants to?
Do we have their email address?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our family series, and thank you for keeping time. We have been having a couple of series covering our services. We have talked about intellectual property in the past. We have talked about insolvency and related services. We have talked about the use of ICT in intellectual property, and today, for the next 3 weeks, we are going to be speaking about a very interesting topic. We're going to talk marriages. Today, we are going to start with a background of marriages in Uganda, and it's going to be given by the Director of Civil Registration, who is called Vincent Katusi. We are going to start, and Vincent, you're going to make your presentation under 30 minutes, so we can give chance to questions and responses to the questions that are going to be raised. So without further ado, I'm going to invite you to share your presentation. Kindly, as you join in, try and mute your mic so that you do not interrupt Vincent's presentation. And you can utilize the chat room to post your questions and comments. Good evening, my name is Provia Nangovi, and I work in URSP as the Head Public Relations and Corporate Affairs. Vincent, you're welcome.
Thank you, Provia, and a very good afternoon, friends. Thank you for joining us today to have a discussion about marriages As earlier introduced, my name is Vincent Katutsi, and I serve as the Director of Civil Registration at Uganda Registration Services Bureau. So to my internal colleagues, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and for our external colleagues joining us online from wherever you are, we thank you very much for finding time to be with us and to share thoughts with us about marriages. Allow me to dive into the presentation. I want to begin by sharing my screen. Just in a second. Probably, please confirm that you can see my screen. We can see.
I can see you.
Thank you so much. So once again, very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again for joining us this afternoon to have a discussion on marriages. I'll run through a presentation because marriage is a phenomenon that affects all of us in a way. Either we belong to a family, or we have founded one, or we're yet to get into one, and therefore, whatever we're discussing today touches the heart of our business as humans, knowing very well that, of course, the family is the smallest unit of society, and therefore, each one of us, in a way, is a player by the fact of belonging. In my presentation this afternoon, I'll talk about the legal framework of marriages in Uganda, and then I'll delve into what I have termed the eligibility criteria, basically to say that even before you talk about marriage, what should be in existence? What are those fibers that come together to create a marriage as properly understood? I'll try to define what a marriage is. And of course, I know that each one of us has their own definition of marriage, depending on where you fall. But I will be, of course, encouraging you to understand that marriage is a legal entanglement, and that therefore it's not what you wish it to be, but what the law presupposes it to be. Thereafter, we'll have a discussion on the type of marriages in Uganda, and then I will specifically mention a couple of things which have become a bit of an ISO in our day-to-day in the understanding of marriages and how they are happening in this country. I want to also talk about our flagship for this last 2 quarters, the special licenses, and I encourage you to probably once in a while, if you feel your person or you are a person engaging in a relationship, probably might want to use one. And then finally, I will discuss the role of URSB in the marriage registration process. Now, dear friends, marriages, like earlier intimated, are structured. There's a framework in the law that provides for marriages in this country. And to begin with is the grand norm, the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, that gives rights to people of a particular type, age, sex, and all, to come together and found a family. The right of persons to come together and found a family. It also provides for a couple of other things which people qualify to go into those relationships, and of course provides the baseline for all the other laws that support the marriage relationship in this country. One of the most known marriages in this country is the customary marriage, because all of us in a way have participated in one or seen one happening, and therefore the legal framework, the Customary Marriages Registration Act, will be also one of the laws that we shall look at in this discussion. The Hindu Marriage and Divorce Act is also one of the laws that we shall look at. The Marriage Act, the Marriage and Divorce of Mohammedans Act, and the Marriage of Africans Act. Now, under those laws, as being principal legislation, we have other legislation that we call, the accepted instruments that have been made under these principal legislations, providing for the implementation of the various laws. Now, to dive into the heart of the discussion and with time in mind, I want to say that for one to talk about marriage as a very first point to note, you must be of age. Under our constitution in Article 31, it is provided that people who are 18 years and above are free to come together and form a family unit, marriage, through a marriage, form a family unit. Now, these people after being over 18 years and more, must not be related to each other by kindred or affinity. They must not have blood relationships or relationships arising out of, say, other unions which are weird relationships which are close in terms of the degrees of marriage. And the laws have gone ahead to delimit what relationships cannot marry, say, each other. And I know this is another point where many a time we have a couple of discussions, people saying that in some cultures, people can marry their first cousins and things of the kind. But again, we'll see how legal that is. Now, the other tenet of a marriage is that there must be free will. The parties, the ones who are 18 years and above, who are not related to each other in any way, must also freely consent to falling into these relationships. Not so long ago, I saw social media a video where some lady at the altar was crying. She was crying rivers, and the husband was fidgeting to put a ring on her finger, and he was having challenges. And I was wondering, where is the free consent in all this? But again, you then hear discussions that that's a show of affection in some communities, and therefore you have all these issues that surround how we relate as custom and all. And then for one to be married in Uganda, at least you must be a person who is single. Or if you are married, then you must be married under customary, which is potentially polygamous, or under Islamic law, which allows up to 4 women. Those to me are the basic things that you must have, the fibers that you must have before you can even think about a marriage. Of course, the other considerations would be that this marriage won't take place in Uganda. So if you want to get married in our legal setting, then you've got to be in the 4 corners of this country. In Uganda, men marry women and women marry men, but not the other way around, and therefore our marriages are heterosexual. So if you have lived in jurisdictions where they recognize same-sex marriages, and then you come up with an idea of wanting to get married in Uganda with this person of the same sex, you'd be in the wrong place. Now, many of the marriages that we go into or will be seeing are for life, except by decision of court or upon death. And so marriage is not something temporary. We do not have arrangements where people agree temporarily to live together for a couple of years and renew, as we have had or might have seen in other jurisdictions. And of course, a customary marriage may be converted into a church marriage, and that is the only time I have seen the law providing for conversion of any sort. So that means that all marriages are mutually exclusive. They do, the laws provide for a complete set of marriages, but when it comes to customary marriages, then they have an option of converting to either a civil marriage or a church marriage. And I believe probably if you want to go into the Muslim arrangement, you can also do the same. Sorry, I can't seem to move my slide. Okay, great. So what is this monster we call marriage? Marriage has lots of definitions. In fact, where you find adults living together under the same roof and enjoying what marriages enjoy, for them, they're in a marriage relationship. On the onset, I want to say that marriage is a legal entanglement. There has to be the law in all this cooking. As you bring these fibers of a person eligible for marriage, you must have the law in mind. That unless the law says this arrangement is a marriage, then it will not be. And so marriage becomes a legal union between a man and a woman, and many a time with an intention of founding a family. So you don't go in, if you want to have any other legal union that has no intention of founding a family, you could probably go into a partnership and a business, or you can even do a company if you wish with this other person. But once you have an intention of founding a family, then your legal union will be called a marriage. Now, the part where the law comes in is the part of legal union, because there can be many unions where a man and a woman come together with an intention of founding a family. But if there is law missing in this whole picture, then we cannot talk about a marriage. And for that matter, you have heard about cohabitation. I know that there are proponents of a thought that we should have people who have lived together under the same roof for quite some time without going through any formal arrangements. So basically, cohabiting becoming recognized as marriage. It's a debate that was in the older bill, but of course, it didn't see the day of light. And as we all know, we yet have a law that probably recognizes cohabitation as a form of marriage. When you go, of course, on the internet and you see forms of marriage, you'll see cohabitation. Maybe there are jurisdictions that respect cohabitation as a form of marriage. In Uganda, cohabitation is basically living together with a friend under the roof, and therefore it has nothing to do with marriage. In fact, when you say marriage and cohabitation, the two words cannot cook in the same pot. Same as, of course, concubinage. Cohabitation, many times you're living with this man and basically you're with this guy. But when it comes to concubinage, maybe it could speak to a side dish arrangement where you have a family here and then there's another person living the other side. And not once, not twice have we seen people come out to say, I have lived with this man as his side wife, I have children with him, and therefore we have a family of sorts, and therefore we are married, especially when times where you need to prove marriage come into play. For example, when there are succession issues, when one of the parties has passed on and there's an issue of property to be shared, there are these issues which come up. In some other jurisdictions, we have what we call civil partnerships. We have seen this in Europe, where people come together, live together for some time, maybe 5 years, and they are able to renew their arrangement. There are benefits in such arrangements where the law allows it, but in Uganda, we do not have such partnerships, and wherever they happen, probably they will be treated as cohabitation or even as concubinage. Now, the gist of our discussion today is about the types of marriages in Uganda. On the onset, I want to say that we have 5 types of marriages. 5 types of marriages, 5 marriages that the laws provide for. We have customary marriages, which, as I said, all of us really have either witnessed or participated in. These are the Kwanjula, the Kuhinjiras, and things of the kind. And they happen to be celebrated in accordance with the customs of any African community. And by and large, they are potentially polygamous, meaning you can, yes, have one married under customary law, as many as possible one. That polygamous arrangement accepted under the one resolution called marriage. Note that we are very clear there's nothing to do with polyandry and things of the kind. It's polygamy, so it's the man that has the leeway of having as many wives as he possibly can, and not the other way around. We have Muslim marriages. Muslim marriages, these are celebrated in accordance with the rights and observance of the Muslim Islamic faith, and they are celebrated amongst people who profess the Islamic faith. We have church marriages. Okay, for Muslim marriages, of course, as we all know, they go up to, you can go up to 4 hakis, you can have up to four wives, and under our system, when you lose probably one, then you can always up the numbers. But again, there are tenets that Muslims over and above the law have to follow. For example, that you should be able to dispense in equal proportions love to the women that you're taking on. You should have the capacity to take care of them. Short of which, then of course you'll be contravening the Islamic faith. We have church marriages. All of us have witnessed, again, either a couple going to church or have participated in these church engagements. These are conducted following rites and customs of the Christian faith. So they can be held in Catholic churches, they can be held in our Protestant churches, they are held in synagogues, they are held in temples and things of the kind. These marriages are monogamous in nature, and therefore it's one man to one woman, and not any other, to the exclusion of any other. We have civil marriages. Civil marriages are marriages that are celebrated in the office of the Registrar General or the Registrar of Marriages in the district. And these civil marriages, again, are provided for by the law under the Marriage Act, primarily to be, again, among people of age who have that capacity to consent. And then they appear before the Registrar General or the Registrar of Marriages in the districts, who is the chief administrative officer, and then they have their marriages. Of course, in Uganda, we have quite a number of Indians and the Hindu. They also have a legal framework that provides for their marriages in this country. And so Hindu marriages are celebrated in accordance with the rights and observance of the Hindu faith. And as we'll be seeing, of course, Indians who profess the Hindu faith or converts are people eligible to get married in those circumstances. Colleagues, emphasis is that we have only 5 types of marriages. So if whatever I have mentioned here, if you have an arrangement that doesn't fall in whatever I have mentioned here, then chances are that you have your own arrangement for a marriage. But as far as we are concerned in this country, the legal framework provides for the 5 categories of marriages. I want to go into a little detail to discuss customary marriages. Customary marriages, like I earlier intimated, are celebrated according to the rights of an African community and one of the parties to which is a member of the community. So yes, if you have a person who comes from a particular community and wishes to marry another person, then we are going to follow the rights of that given community and how they handle the marriage exercise, and then we shall go into a relationship called marriage. On the right, I guess left in my case, is a picture of what would represent such an arrangement. Customary marriages are normally between families, so families come together, and actually at the very topmost, it's the families that are exchanging vows, not even the individuals. The individuals are players, but the biggest part of the work is done by the families following custom. Like I earlier intimated, these are potentially polygamous, and when they are celebrated, they are supposed to be registered within 6 months with the registrar of marriages, who is the senior assistant secretary or the sub-county chief, and also the town clerk when it happens in a setting that is in a town setting. Now, these marriages are registrable, and once you register them, then that certificate of registration becomes proof of the existence of a marriage. In case you have anywhere to prove your marriage, upon presentment of this certificate of registration, then you are legally recognized to be married until otherwise proved. And I just want to say that we have seen instances lately where people will come and tell you a story about someone who passed on and the arrangement was a customary marriage, and they want to now look for a customary certificate of marriage. I want to say that customary marriages, the mode of registration is that the parties, that is the bride and the groom, now husband and wife, will appear before the senior assistant secretary or the town clerk with witnesses, many a time parents, uncles, aunties, and furnish proof before this office that they were married. And once the person is convinced of the arrangement having happened and having followed custom, he will then jot down their particulars and they sign. So you do not go as an individual and pick a customary marriage certificate. The presupposition is that both parties have appeared before the relevant officer in person and they have signed. Now, once you sign, then you're able to bring this registration certificate to URSB, and it is registrable at 20,000 shillings if it's within the first 6 months of the celebration of the marriage. But should it be past 6 months, then there will be a fine, which will make it about 40,000 shillings for registration. I want to also note that non-registration of a marriage per se does not invalidate a marriage. I want to repeat that non-registration of a marriage, a customary marriage per se, does not invalidate a marriage. So the marriage is valid, yes, but chances are it's going to become very hard for you to prove it, because when you begin now calling for evidence, it could be as hard as anything. And we have cases in this country that have been tested in courts where marriages have been challenged as to whether or not they ever existed. So to call upon my brothers and sisters listening to me this afternoon, that if you're one of those who has had a customary marriage, it's in your best interest to have this marriage registered, because it safeguards a couple of things when the time calls. Let's talk about the church marriage under the Marriage Act. Now, church marriages may be celebrated according to the norms and customs, rights and usages of a given church. It could be a church, it could be a denomination, it could be a body. So that's how then you know that the Catholics have the way they do their things, the Protestants have the way they do their things, probably the Seventh-day Adventists have the way they do their things, but it's according to the rights and usages of a given church, denomination, or body. Now, for church marriages to be celebrated, they must happen in licensed places of worship. The law provides that the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who is the lay minister in this case, is supposed to license a place of worship before such a place can be eligible to solemnize marriages. Now, the meaning is also simple, that if then you go to a place that is not licensed, what you have might not be a marriage. It might be a union, but not necessarily a legal marriage as legally properly understood. Therefore, I want to again emphasize that if you are going to get married, or if you have been married, it's incumbent on you to find out if indeed the place you went to for your marriage was a licensed place of worship. The licenses are issued by the minister upon proof of a few things, and the licenses are gazetted, so there's knowledge to the whole world of what is and what is not licensed. Now, When churches are celebrating marriages, these marriages are celebrated by a person who is authorized to celebrate marriages in a given denomination, church or body. So there will be people who are allowed to solemnize marriages in those denominations, churches, or even bodies. Now, I want to also make it very clear that we do not, the country, the law does not license celebrants of marriages. So let no one tell you that me, I'm a pastor and I have a license to celebrate marriages. The license is to the place of worship. The celebration is allowed to be done by a person who is authorized by that church, that denomination or body to do the celebration. Now, for these marriages to be celebrated, they must be celebrated in with open doors between the hours of 8 in the forenoon and 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Please ensure that when you're having your celebration, your marriage is between the hours of 8 in the forenoon and 6 in the afternoon. So when you're doing your vows, be within these timelines, because if you are out of these timelines, then that may also affect the validity of your marriage. And also, of course, as we have seen in church practice, these marriages happen in the presence of witnesses who are always there to witness and actually sign on the marriage certificate, of course, alongside or besides the officiating minister. So if you remember the guidance of His Excellency the President, who was saying we want the most relevant persons to appear in churches for marriages, and therefore let's have scientific marriages. He said the most relevant would be the two bagole, the couple, their witnesses, and probably the church minister. And therefore 4 people plus the celebrant could be enough. Of course, as we know, our church marriages normally are witnessed by people, and therefore it doesn't do any harm to have the public to accept the two marriages into the marital congregation. But if push comes to shove, then 4 people plus the minister could be enough to see through a church marriage. Oh, my slide is hanging. Okay, great. Good. Now, the other marriage under the Marriage Act is the civil marriage. The civil marriage is a marriage, like I earlier intimated, that is celebrated in the office of the Registrar of Marriages of a given, marriage district, and also the Registrar General's office for the district of Kampala. So the Registrar of Marriages in the districts is the Chief Administrative Officer, and for the Kampala region is the Registrar General. If some of you colleagues listening to me this afternoon have had a chance to pass by our beautiful head office at Georgian House on the 4th floor, I'm sure you've seen people who are clad in marriage attire, all happy, all excited, about to get wed. This is because the office of the Registrar General in the district of Kampala is responsible for conducting civil marriages. Now, if you go to the districts, if you go to Wakiso, if you go to Mbale, if you go to Ukedia, if you go to Arua, if you go to Gulu, then these functions will be performed by the chief administrative officers in that capacity as marriage registrars. These marriages are celebrated between the hours of 10 and 4. Please do note the time, that the hours for civil marriage celebration are between the hours of 10 and 4 in the afternoon. So 10 in the forenoon and 4 in the afternoon. So obviously anything done past or before that time will have some legal challenges. And they also celebrated in the presence of 2 witnesses, besides the officiating minister, who's the registrar of marriages in that case. Now, I want to just mention that when marriages are celebrated in districts, say before the car or even the churches, they're supposed to be returned to the Registrar General's office as a central repository for all this information. And in this particular case, the returning officers, who are the district registrars of marriages, are supposed to return these marriages in the first 10 days of the preceding month. So let's say, for example, a marriage is celebrated in October. By November 10th, they should have been collecting of all these marriages and the same sent to the office of the Registrar General for final repository. In the picture there, you see our dear Registrar General solemnizing a marriage, and you see a happy couple there. We couldn't give you the faces, but I can assure it's always excitement. And we at Civil call ourselves the Happy Directorate. You come to us and we put a smile on your face. Don't hesitate to join us as and when you feel you should. Dear friends, again, we have the Islamic marriages. This, like I earlier intimated, as written under the Marriage and Divorce of Mohammedans Act. I know that my Muslim brothers and sisters listening to me have an issue with the word Mohammedan. At least I have heard it in a number of occasions, and we are doing everything possible to capture the right information through an amendment. But as all of us know, legal amendment takes a bit of time. When that time comes, we shall definitely do the best to improve on the text of that piece of legislation. But these are marriages which are celebrated according to the rites and observances of the Mohammedan religion, customarily and usually among the tribes or sects to which the marriage or divorce is taking place. In Uganda, we have a couple of sects of Muslim sects that also have different ways in which they conduct marriages. And I want to note that we do respect the various sects and how they observe the rites in celebrating these marriages. As earlier intimated, Islamic marriages are polygamous, if I may use the word, but only up to 4 wives. So a Muslim man can legally marry up to 4 wives. And also, when probably one of them is divorced for some reason, he can always add on and make his wives 4. But he can also have 1 wife, depending on his means or his choices. So it's potentially polygamous, not naturally polygamous, but potentially polygamous, because the person has a choice to either marry 1 or up to 4 wives. And they take place many a time at mosques, but also any other place. It could be a home. It could be a home because the scholars of the Islamic religion will tell us that in Islam, they say that when a person feels the urge to get married, then in the earliest time possible, these marriages should be celebrated. Please note that for celebration of Islamic marriages, you need not have any license of sorts. I want to make a contrast with the church marriage, that the church must be licensed before it can celebrate a marriage. And yet, in terms of celebration by by the Muslims, the mosque need not be licensed. In fact, mosques are not licensed for that purpose. When it comes to registration of these marriages, of course, again, we follow the same criteria. They are supposed to be made within a month from the date of marriage to the registrar, who could be the district registrar, in this case, the cow, who then makes the transmission to the registrar general for final record in the marriage register of Islamic marriages. And this is supposed to be done by the returning officer of the marriage. Like I want to again emphasize the chief administrative officer, who is the marriage registrar of the district. And his appointment is by certain instrument, the instruments I showed you at the very start, as those which are guiding on how this process is supposed to be conducted. The other final marriage is the Hindu marriage. Like I earlier intimated, again, it's a marriage that is held or conducted between parties who profess the Hindu faith. Now, one might be Hindu by religion, you could be a Buddhist of Indian origin, a Jain or a Singh, or even a convert. For as long as you profess the Hindu religion, then you are free to solemnize your marriage in that manner. This, like I earlier again said, is a marriage that is normally seen amongst the Indian population in this country, and we have a register for these marriages, and we keep on populating it and receiving returns from the Indian temples. I want to emphasize 3 main points. One of them is that a customary marriage shall be void if one of the parties has previously contracted a monogamous marriage which is still subsisting. So whereas customary marriages are potentially polygamous, you are excluded from conducting a customary marriage if you have already had a marriage under either a church or a civil arrangement. Why? Because church and civil arrangements are monogamous marriages. So you cannot then have a subsequent marriage outside those. It's different if your spouse has probably passed on or you have divorced and therefore are free to now start into a new process of marriage. But if you are still having a subsisting marriage and then you indulge in a customary marriage, it shall be void. And of course, you'll be committing crimes under the Marriage Act. Now, a church or a civil marriage shall be invalid if either of the parties to it at the time of celebration of the marriage is married by customary to any other person other than the person with whom the church or civil marriage is being had. What are we saying? That the only time that a customary marriage can be converted into a church marriage is if you are going to the altar with the same woman that you married customarily. So a church marriage or a civil marriage that is solemnized after a customary marriage has been solemnized, but with a different party than the one you bring to church or to the civil office, is null and void, and therefore a contravention of the law. And why I pick out these points is because on a daily, as we practice what we practice, we see people coming up with these stories. I was married in the village in a customary setting. My husband came to Kampala, found some money, and the other day we saw him in church, waving this and waving the other. We have heard this in politicians, we have seen it in musicians. So these things are happening. And sometimes I dare say in ignorance. But the position of the law is, as I am putting it down for you to understand, kindly take note that once a church marriage or civil marriage is solemnized, when there is a subsisting customary marriage with a different person other than the person you bring to church, then such marriage will be null and void. Now, the Marriage Act shall not apply to celebrations of marriages between persons, both of whom profess the Mohammedan faith. So the Marriage Act is out of the way when we talk about people under Mohammedan. The Mohammedan faith have their own law, and therefore, if you're trying to interpret a relationship that is Mohammedan in nature, that is an Islamic relationship, then you do not bring matters of the Marriage Act into play in this particular case. Okay, so if a person then, of course, is in a subsisting Muslim marriage, he can either contract a church marriage nor a civil marriage, because again, he's catered for under the Mohammedan arrangement. Friends, as we come to the tail end of my discussion, I want to talk about special licenses. This has been a flagship for us for quite some time in this COVID period of time. The law allows that a party may apply to the minister for a special license in two occasions. Occasion number one is if you do not have time enough to wait for 21 days of notice, because as we could have seen, I hope I talked about it, the question of notice, that whenever there is a marriage in the civil setting or even in the church setting, there is notice that is given to the public. In churches, we have heard about bans. Bans are a custom of church. They don't have any grounding in the law, but they're a custom of church. That they will read out 3 times within a space of 3 weeks. So and so, son of X and Y, so and so, daughter of X and Z, intend to get married. If anyone knows of anything that should impede their marriage, come out and then, and it happens for 3 consecutive weeks. The idea is to give notice to the public that anyone who has an issue to raise about an intended marriage then can come out and complain. And the law has provided for a criteria under which these are handled. They are called caveats. So you lodge a caveat, and then the caveat, once in the hands of the registrar of marriages, is supposed to be sent to court, and then the court makes a determination at the fastest time possible, and then brings back feedback for either a marriage to be stopped or to go on. In some instances, if it's unfair for the party that hands have their function, court will even award damages if a person has really disrupted an otherwise legal arrangement. So that is a special license. The special license will come in to dispense with 21 days of notice. So, for example, you have an issue that you have to attend to, say outside the country, but you want to go, when you're married. You don't have 21 days to give notice to the public. In a civil setting, when you do make an application for a civil marriage, we again pin your notice for 21 days on the notice board in a very conspicuous place for people to come and see, and again raise the same concerns as the church practice is. But in this case, you don't have enough time. So what you do, you apply for a special license, and then the minister, in his wisdom, after considering your application and its viability, then will have the rest to say, I waive 21 days of notice. You may wait tomorrow, you may wait the other day. So friends, again, don't be constrained. If your love is burning you up and you want to get it done with, yes, you have a leeway. You can apply to the minister, explain yourself, and if he's comfortable with your explanation, a license will be issued and your marriage will not have to last waiting 21 days. Now, the other instance where we have licenses is when you want to have your celebration outside, say, a gazetted church, or even the office of the Registrar of Marriages, or the Registrar General's office, for example. Now, you could have your reasons. You could find that the church that you want to get married, by is probably so small to accommodate your type of entourage. You might find that you have a function at a hotel area, and you believe that all could be done in the same environment. You could have your reasons. You could have elderly parents who don't want to move so many, kilometers, a lot of distance to go for these ceremonies. And so what you do is you apply for a gazette to visit a particular place that is convenient for you. And many a time, once the minister gets to understand your reasons behind this, the minister, many a time, of course, obliges and gives you the license. This license by application is by ordinary letter, but we say that you support your garments by an affidavit. These documents are sent to the Registrar General's office at URSP who then processes these documents upon consultation of the information therein, and then forwards the same for the guidance of the minister. Please note that the preparation by the Registrar General's office is merely paper preparation. The decision is made by the Minister for Justice, who under law is the person mandated to do that. I just want to say a few things about the role of URSB in marriage registration. URSB, for the better part of its time, is known for business registration as one of our services that we do offer to the public. But we also have the role, like I have already been, trying to lay it out. One, we solemnize civil marriages. Like I said, in the district of Kampala, the district general's office is responsible for civil marriages. We register all church marriages. So every church that is licensed after solemnizing marriages delivers a return of these marriages to us. And by registering, then of course we maintain registers of marriage, and then we also become the clearinghouse for this information. Dear friends, tomorrow if you have to travel with your husband, your wife, and there is need by the embassy to prove that you are married, they might not come to you, they might not talk to your church, they will talk to the registrar of marriages to verify if indeed the two of you who claim to be married are actually married. And this happens many times behind your back, and then you either get a proper return of visa or a near return of visa. My prayer to you would be that we ensure, those of us who are married, that our marriage is one happening in the space of worship, and also that our church leaders are able to send back these returns to the registrar of marriages for purposes of custody. We aid in the process of licensing of churches. Like I said, the minister is responsible for licensing churches, but to do this, paperwork must be done by us. So we do the preliminary work, study the viability of a given place of worship for the license, and then advise the minister accordingly, who in turn then licenses the place of worship. We have registers for Islamic marriages and divorces. We have registers for Hindu marriages and divorces, and we also maintain the customary marriage registers. We are a clearinghouse for all this information, and if you want to know anything marriages, then we are the place to go to. I felt it would be unfair for me to leave without talking about the issuance of marital single sex letters. There is a practice world over that before a person who is an external or an outsider or a foreigner for that matter gets wed in a particular jurisdiction, his mother country where this person originates must certify that this person is single. So we have then that service at URSB where we issue single sex letters to persons who are interested in getting married in the diaspora. Of course, there's a criteria that we follow. You don't just come and tell us that you're single and then you get one. There's a criteria that we follow to do some average due diligence to be sure that we are dealing with the right person. And once we are convinced that this person indeed is single, then we make an issuance of a single sex letter that aids you in as far as getting married in an external jurisdiction is concerned. And of course, as we do what we do, we charge fees. These fees are payable into the consolidated fund. And for those of you listening to me work with government, the money that you get paid, I think, is part of what we do collect on a daily. I want to thank you, dear friends, for listening to me, but only to share our addresses in case you are in town or you're outside town. Kampala, you can come to Kampala, our head office. We have main post office building. We have Uganda Investment Authority towers. We have a building, an office at Sekaziga House that will be open as soon as we have the arcades open. We have an office in Imbale, Park Crescent. We have an office in Waraya, Kamukuzi Hill. We have an office in Gulu, Princess Road, Arua, Pakwachi Road, and Masaka at Edward Avenue. These are offices, these are branch offices for URSB. They offer the same services that you'll get here. So if you are in the country, don't be constrained to access our services. Please do move there and get our services. And in case you have any challenges and you feel that you need to do actual contact with us, then again, the contacts below are available for you to get to us. We are on Facebook. We are on URSB Q at Twitter, and also have the toll-free line, which you can use to get to us. I believe that I have been able to incite you in as far as marriages are concerned, and should you have any concerns, we are more than available to answer them. I have a panel of colleagues who are online today, very good experts in this area, who will speak to these issues even much better than I do. So feel free, ask your questions, and we shall get back to you. I thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Vincent, for your insightful conversation about marriages. I know you exceeded the time, but then you had so much to talk about. We shall continue engaging even after today. So I have a couple of questions in the chat. Let me just read them for you, and then you can respond to them. You can keep posting in the chat, and we shall respond. Okay, Vincent, this is a question from Promise. Promise asked Vincent, if you could address us about prenuptial agreement, what are legally, what is legally accepted in Europe, but in Uganda is still a silent venture? I'm going to take 3 questions, then you can answer at once. That was about prenuptial agreement. Then okay. Okay, this was a discussion amongst 2 people. Okay, Promise again asks, kindly address her about the refugees who wish to get married in Uganda. For instance, some refugee from Nachivale wanted to get married and was forced to come to Mbarara because in Isingiro, the chief administrative officer has no powers. So they say, she said, in quotes, Mbu, in brackets. And then the third one from Eric, in which instances will the Divorce Act be applicable in customary marriages? Can you take those 3 and then return to in which instance will the Divorce Act be applicable in customary marriages? Kindly respond to those, Vincent. Turn on your mic.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you, colleagues, for those very wonderful questions. I want to begin with the question of the prenuptials. I think the one asking the question literally actually also answered it. He says that in Uganda, it is not widely accepted. Prenuptials are agreements that people enter into to safeguard their possessions before entering into marriage relationships, to at least as a way of managing there would be excesses when marriages end up going haywire. Now in Uganda we do not have, and I think for the most of Africa we do not have these prenuptials being recognized as agreements, because I think it's because of our social setup. What I have not seen though is anyone taking the lead and saying, I want to go into this arrangement, a contractual arrangement with my partner, to exclude her from what I have had before. I have had instances where people have come to ask and say, I'm getting married to this person, I have ABCD with me, but how safe am I if I marry them? Will they be looking back at my property and things of the kind? So what I can tell you, promise, is that prenuptials in Uganda, I have not heard of any recognition of them by our courts of law. But I also think, and this is really very individual, I also think that we should have a person bold enough to test the system by taking up a prenuptial, and probably when things go wrong, we see how it happens. Of course, premised under the general concept of contract. The issue of refugees who wish to be registered married in Uganda. Colleagues, you know that Uganda is one of those jurisdictions that hosts the biggest number of refugees in the world. I think as a country, we are proud that we are hospitable, we welcome people, we are humans, we take humanity very seriously. Refugees under the various international instruments are supposed to be accorded national treatment, because they are people, they are not refugees because they wish. They are also forced by circumstances. And therefore, when they come to us here, they get services the same way Ugandans get, what we call national treatment. This applies to refugees, and even in some instances to asylum seekers who are seeking to become refugees. Now, the issue of refugees having to move places, having to go through this hustle and bustle, is because of general ignorance. You cite an example of Isingiro. Yes, we have host communities of these refugees, and we have registrars of marriages in these host districts. We have the cows in these districts. So if they knew that it was their role to recognize civil marriages amongst people in their jurisdictions, then this wouldn't be an issue. Unfortunately, Some do not know, and we continue to teach and to talk to them, to dialogue with them through the structure, the local government structure. They even mandated under the law, under the constitution, in the 6th schedule, but also under the local government act to do these marriages. But unfortunately, not all of them are aware of this service. So it's unfortunate that some could run off from this responsibility and make these refugees suffer. But what should be happening is that when you are a refugee in a host district, you should be able to access these services from the COW's office. Now, in which instances is the Divorce Act applicable to customary marriages? Customary marriages are supposed to be dissolved the same way they were entered into. And a couple of cases have come out to really talk about this. There were instances, for example, when if you divorce the person under customary marriage, you would have to return the bride wealth. But of course, we have seen courts coming up to say that is unconstitutional. Bride wealth is fine, it's constitutional. You can carry on with bride wealth as a practice, but at the dissolution of marriage, then don't go and ask for your cows and things of the kind. But you see, over and above the tenets of custom, as far as marriages are concerned, there are also other issues. For example, if there are children in the marriage, if there's property to be shared amongst the parties, then those matters might want to go really under a proper judicial system, the court of law, the magistrates court, or even the high court. So those are the instances where property, where other rights of, say, custody of children, those other general rights, you're supposed to go under the Divorce Act to receive them. But if it's a plain marriage where you met somebody, you have no children, you have no nothing, you probably have no property to even talk about, then you can divorce just the same way the custom allows that to be. I also saw another question, I think, about someone was asking if non-registration of a marriage will invalidate it, the customary marriage will invalidate it. I want to re-echo that a marriage is one because of following the criteria that marriages are understood to be, how they understood to be formed. So, for example, if all custom has been followed, then there's a customary marriage. Now, the fact of registration, many a time, gives more evidential value, legitimizes the whole process in a way that then avoids having to call evidence, prove this and prove the other. There is a prominent case that I would want to cite, the case of Chigongo versus Chigongo. The lawyers who are practicing this kind of business, I'm sure you know about it, where when went to court, there was to prove whether or not there was a customary marriage. And it became so hard. People were bringing pictures, people said on forms and things of the kind, and the court said there was no marriage. So imagine if this couple in the good times had a customary marriage registered, like I said, appearing before the sub-county chief and having them, receive a certificate. Maybe all that wouldn't have happened. And as I earlier intimated, the presence of a customary marriage certificate is prima facie proof of the existence of a marriage. So you wouldn't have to go through the hustle and bustle. So in one word, non-registration does not invalidate a marriage. It's still a marriage, but the challenge comes in when you need to then to prove that a marriage ever took place. I thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Vincent. There is a question from David. David asked, how do you register a marriage that is between a refugee and a national? And then there's a question from Dennis. What is the difference in applicability between the Customary Marriage Act and the Marriage of the Africans Act?
What is that?
What is the difference in applicability between the Customary Marriage Act and the Marriage of Africans Act? And then how do you register a marriage that is between a refugee and a national?
What is the difference between
marriage, the Customary Marriage Act and the Marriage of Africans Act? Yes, please.
Thank you, David. David, a refugee and a national, you see, the law allows that if you are a person above the age of 18 and you meet another person above the age of 18 and you fall in what is called love, then you can go ahead and found a family and establish a relationship. You can even do a marriage if you so wish. So forget about the refugee as a coat you put on because of circumstances. A refugee is as good as any other person, And therefore, if a refugee falls in love with a national, that will be very fine. It will be taken as any marriage. You can marry in a church, you can marry in a civil setup, you can marry anywhere you want to marry. Because in Uganda, we do not say that Ugandans should marry Ugandans. You can marry any other person of choice for as long as you're doing it under our legal systems, and those marriages are registrable under our system. Then the issue of the customary law and the Marriage of Africans Act. The Marriage of Africans Act is not an act that we practice extensively at the Bureau, and for reasons very unclear, because many a time the marriages that we do handle tend to fall under the Marriage Act. But when you look at the Marriage of Africans Act, it seems to talk about Africans who have gotten the light of Christendom, but are all Africans. So it talks about a marriage between Africans getting married, and puts forth a couple of things that probably would waive a number of applications under the Marriage Act, for example. So, for example, the question of notice. Under the Marriage of Africans Act, there is no question of notice. You do not have to give notice to the public about your intended marriage and all that. Similarly, when you go under that very law, the question of caveat, I think they do not talk about caveating where you have a challenge in as far as getting married. Because if someone comes up with a caveat and says, I know this person to be married to X, they don't talk about the issues of damages. They tend to enhance them. But the Marriage of Africans Act is a law that would apply to Africans of African descent who wish to get married to each other, but have a kind of faith that they profess. There is no difference between the Marriage of Africans Act and the Marriage Act in as far as the practice is concerned, but there are certain allowances that you receive when you marry under the Marriage of Africans Act, and also when you marry under the Marriage Act. The customary law is a different act altogether, because the Marriage of Customary Act has some kind of bearing on some kind of faith, Christendom, and things of the kind. That's what I could say.
Listen, there are a number of questions. I don't know, you have to take a deep breath and then respond. Okay. Now, another question coming from David Emazu is, how long does it take to license a church? That is the first question. How long does it take to license a church? Then a question from Benita. Why must churches register before conducting marriages and mosques don't? Why must churches register before conducting marriages and mosques don't? That's from Benita. And then Joshua Kato is asking, what is the actual age accepted to start a church marriage? Probably is meaning to celebrate or conduct a church marriage. Yeah. And then that is Joshua. Let me read for you this so you can. And then Herbert Obale is asking, what is the forum for dissolving a civil marriage? Take those four, and then we can take the last set, and then, yeah. What is the forum for dissolving a civil marriage?
Okay, thank you, moderator. Once again, thank you for those wonderful questions. Mr. Emazu, I hope it's a Mr. Emazu, how long does it take to license a church? I want to say that licensing the church is a bit of a process. Probably I should first give you the things that you would need to put together before you can have a church licensed. One, you have to have a permanent place. And so many times we ask that you have at least the church should have a title, because we don't want churches that have legs. So today you're here, tomorrow you're the other side, the other day you're the other side. We want a church that is in one place, so it has to have either a title or maybe a tenancy agreement, but for a very long time, that will ensure that the church is going to be in one place for quite some time. The building must have some average permanence, really. We don't want to have a situation where churches are likely to fall on our people during prayers, because we have to safeguard the interests of our people. So sometimes we ask, if it's in the country, we ask that the cow does an inspection with the health people and then gives us a report on the viability of a particular place, being licensed. But once you have all this paperwork together, once you have given us the pictorials of the church, we have the land title, we have the LCs that know about you, we have the names of the pastors in the church who will be officiating these marriages, then we work on a license and send it to the minister. Now, the minister takes about between 1 to 4 days give us responses, basically send back the licenses. But these licenses have got to be notified to the general public. So we ask that they are gazetted. So you take this license to Uganda Gazette, and the same is licensed. Now, as you can see, the time in between is really dependent on how prepared a particular person is. And if you're very prepared, I could say maybe within 2 to 3 weeks, you have all that you need, because once you have the license and you have it gazetted, then the church can go ahead and begin now running into the issue of celebration marriages. Benita, well, Benita, I'm also a shepherd of the law, if I may use the word. So I apply what has been given. When we look at our laws as they are, the Marriage Act is a law of 1906. That's the law that we still use. A few amendments here and there, but in principle, it's a law of 1906. And in that law, they say that churches must be licensed. The Marriage and Divorce of Mohammedans is, I think, a law of 1978. And I think in the wisdom of the framers of that law, they did not deem it fit for mosques to be licensed. And therefore, I wouldn't really give you a very clear answer as to why we have that different treatment. But it could also be because of the custom. Like I said, under Mohammedans, once you conceive the idea of marriage and you're agreeable with your partner, I think the religion demands that you do it as soon as you possibly can, than wasting a lot of time. Joshua, the actual age of marriage. The actual age of marriage, Joshua, I want to go with the age that is provided for in the Constitution. Article 31, it says that the person of 18 and above is a person of majority age, and that person is free to make his own choices. And so that is the law that you're going to go by. I know that when you read the Marriage Act, the Customary Marriage Resolution Act, there are some years that were mentioned, but do not forget that these are laws that were preceding the Constitution. Now, when the Constitution, of course, came in place in 1995, then all other laws had to conform to the Constitution, otherwise they would be invalid to the extent of non-conformity. And so, yes, the actual age of marriage under church, under civil, under customary, under any marriage type, by virtue of that article of the Constitution, will be the age of 18 going on. Herbert, what is the form of dissolving a civil marriage? Civil marriages, like any other church marriage, civil marriage, and even like I said, where you have challenges under the other marriages, they do not exclude the courts of law from listening to you. So whereas the Office of the Registrar of Marriages will solemnize a marriage, when it comes to issues of dissolution, then these matters go to court. And not to the Registrar of Marriages. I have, of course, had instances where people have come here to say, I'm done with my person, we can't live together anymore, I want to opt out. And we have had to tell them that you have got to go to court. You've got to go to court, you file a petition, and your matter is heard and disposed of by the court as deems fit. I thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I know we can't exhaust this discussion. Reason why I said we're going to have more engagements the coming weeks, the next 3 or 4 weeks until we are done with everything. So we know we had only 1 hour and we've exceeded 1 hour by 4 minutes. We don't want to take your time. We want to keep to the time that we communicated. Now I would like to invite the Registrar General to speak with us and close our session. Next week, we shall meet again at 3:30 and we shall be talking about customary marriages. Basically, we shall be keeping it low to customary marriages. And then next, we shall talk about church marriages. And the next one, the Muslim marriages. Please continue to engage with us and to keep in touch with us. Registrar General, you're welcome.
Thank you, Provia. Thank you, Vincent, for the wonderful presentation. I don't know why my video is not getting on. Okay, it has failed to project. I think there's a technical problem. Allow me to thank Vincent for the great presentation he has given us. And I want to thank all the staff that have tuned in and our clients, our friends, our partners that are in. I see Aripo. I don't know who has tuned in from Aripo. We recognize whoever is representing Aripo. Thank you for tuning in. I see private players, private lawyers, private business people, the married, the unmarried. Thank you very much for tuning in. Vincent, once again, I thank you, and we look forward to learning more and more as we promote the family institution, as we safeguard the family institution, especially when it comes to matters of inheritance, when it comes to matters of security, when it comes to matters of access to even finances and travel abroad. You need to be on our register. There's so many advantages. And again, I thank you, team URSB, for organizing. I thank you once again, Vincent Katutsi. Have a great weekend. Okay, back to you, Provia.
Thank you, Araji. We can now see your video is now clear. We can see you. So I don't know if you want to repeat your parting shots now that we can see you.
No, it was the audio was the most important.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, participants, thank you so much. We have taken your emails. We are going to share the presentations right now before we leave so that you can read, the ones who joined late, and learn from what Vincent presented. We shall meet again next week, and we will be talking about customary marriages. I know there's been a lot of interest on customary marriages, so we're going to handle that next week, same time. Thank you, and have a good evening and a nice weekend.